It is a great blessing and honor to introduce you to this incredible human being who devotes his life to helping people just like me. Ladies and gentlemen, Father Gregory Boyle.
Let me just say some things. All of us are here tonight because we have found exquisite mutuality and transformation through Homeboy Industries. What happens at Homeboy is never a one-way street, but it impacts us all. So for nearly 30 years, I have been changed and saved and rescued by the thousands of men and women I've been privileged to know through this graced place called Homeboy. I was having dinner with a homie who has worked at Homeboy for a while and has become something of a public speaker in his own right, and he was giving me tips on how to speak publicly. And he said, you know, you gotta pepper your talk with self-defecating humor. I said, yeah, no shit. So, brace yourselves. In his Nobel Peace Prize acceptance speech, Martin Luther King said that he believed that unarmed truth and unconditional love will have the last word. At Homeboy Industries, we believe the same thing. A homie named Artie, who brought two gang members into my office one day, not from his gang, who, like him, wanted to be brought into our 18-month program. And Artie explains to them in front of me what Homeboy is all about. And he says simply, it's a healing place of hope. And that's exactly right. Unarmed truth and unconditional love greets the folks who walk through our doors, and the wholeness they'll find requires only that these folks start where they are and not where they'd like to be. For every homie and homegirl who passes through our doors brings with them a storehouse of unspeakable pain, stories of violence and abandonment, neglect and terror, and they trade in division and the illusion of separation for the wholeness of kinship. At Homeboy Industries, we don't hold them against their wishes. We hold them until they can reclaim their own wishes. Several months ago, with only 2 hours' notice, we got a phone call from the Secret Service saying that Vice President Joe Biden was going to come for lunch. And, you know, he took selfies with all the homies and homegirls in the cafe and his motorcade and the whole 9 yards. I wasn't there. I was on a retreat, my annual 8-day retreat, so I wasn't there. So I got a voicemail message on my cell phone, and it said, hey, Father Greg, this is Joe Biden. Where have you been all my life, he says. And he just loved Homeboy, and he even said, I'll tell anybody who will listen, I stay a Catholic because of the Jesuits and nuns. Me too, Joe. So when I got home, I was debriefed by homies. A homie came up to me and he said, while you were gone, we were visited by an MVP. I said, do you mean a VIP? He goes, that one, yeah. VIP. He said, imagine, gee, here at Homeboy Industries, we were visited by the Vice President of the United States, Mick Romney. I swear to you. So we're going to start a current affairs class as part of our curriculum. But by any measurement by which society measures things, the men and women who posed for selfies with the vice president that particular day would be generally deemed in the world as less than, beyond the reach of redemption. Once a gang member, always a gang member, the demonized other who do not belong to us. Homeboy Industries, like all of you here tonight, believe in a God of second chances. and Homeboy stands at the margins with all of you, counterposed to a culture that encourages us not to take our pain seriously. It is Homeboy's culture of kindness that stimulates the body and the soul to heal itself. A homie, after waiting a month to come into our program, and then after only a month in our program, stopped me in front of my building with a certain sense of urgency. He says, "I have to tell you something. You know, I gave up on my family a long-ass time ago," he said. "This is my family now. You know, this whole homeboy thing, it works." So in this sense, Homeboy Industries is sort of the original Discovery Channel. The homies are helped to detoxify so they can discover their true and sacred selves. Here our folks find their stories, their voice, and discover their own authority in that. They excavate their wounds and move well beyond rage and shame, and they discover finally the passion for possibility, and they find a place, a home, where they can no longer refuse joy. They discover here that they are valuable, both MVP and VIP. Maya Angelou writes, "I long, as does every human being, to be home where I find myself." After 4 months with us, a 19-year-old homie covered in tattoos needed to meet with me to tell me only this: if it weren't for Homeboy, I'd be dead. And then he continued to clarify, not locked up, dead. I said, okay. Not long ago, I was speaking in Houston, and a former gang member who was working with gang members now came up to me and very earnest and pleading, and he said, "How do you reach them?" And I said, "For starters, stop trying to reach them. Can you be reached by them? Can you receive who they are?" Homeboy receives people. It doesn't rescue them. And in this receiving, they find themselves at home in their own skin. They find luminous meaning and purpose. The message is not "you can do better" or "you can do it," but rather, who you are is enough. And when you have enough, you have plenty. We drug test, as everybody knows, to enter our 18-month program. And so I met a homie who wanted to get into the program, and he was sitting in my office, and he said, "I'm at a pitchfork in my life." And I knew what he meant, and it's a good thing I speak homie. And I asked him, "Would you test clean?" And he was just shaking in his answer, and he said, "All I have in my system is hope. I will test positive for that." The hope found at Homeboy Industries is like a path in the countryside. At first, there's nothing there, but as people walk this way again and again, a path appears. Since the last time we gathered here, the White House called, and the president wanted to meet with some homies. So I brought 4 homies over to the LA Trade Tech, and they were very excited. The homies were saying in the car things like, "Not everybody gets to meet with the President of the United States, you know, not even rappers." And another guy said, "Not even Lil Wayne." I had to Google him. Watch, he won't say, "Call me Mr. President." He'll say, "Call me Barack." That didn't happen, actually. And so there was a huge line snaking all around the block at LA Trade Tech, and the hottest day of the summer, and we bypassed the line because we were told to go to the front. And I got to the front, and there, I'll say, it was an elected local official who was trying to plead with the Secret Service to let him in, and it was one of those perhaps you don't know who I am kinds of things, and I verified who he was, and the Secret Service says you're not going in. Then he turned to me and I said, Homeboy Industries? He said, yeah, come on in. So we were rushed into the VIP section, the shady section. We sat there, and during the national anthem, a homie sitting next to me tugged on my shirt, and he says, I don't know how to describe what's happening to me right now. I said, try. I don't know. I got chills, he said. And that's not the sound of a sudden burst of patriotism. It's the sound of a homie inhabiting the truth of who he is. And so afterwards, in an airless room, we shook hands with the President of the United States. And the President asked one of the homies, what do you do at Homeboy Industries? And he says, well, I work in the maintenance department, but I mainly work on myself. You know, anger management therapy. And the leader of the free world shook his hand and said, I commend you. And we all commend you. If love is the answer, community is the context, and tenderness is the methodology. Only tenderness is mutually transformational. For love can stay in the head, and it even can stay in the heart. But only tenderness is the connective tissue joining us together, reminding us not to choose alienation over connection, self-absorption over kinship. A trainee said to me recently, never, ever in my life have I felt surrounded by love till now, until here. The spiritual practice of Homeboy Industries is to present a resistance culture at the margins, armed only with tenderness. It is the beloved community of which Martin Luther King so often spoke. Just before we had our very first low Maximo, I was going through chemotherapy for leukemia. So I disappeared a little bit. And then I got a phone call telling me that a homie I knew named Philip was in a serious car accident. And Philip is one of those small group of homies for whom I credit my white hair. He was a knucklehead back in the day. But Homeboy was able to help him, and he was able to move beyond. So I kind of left my house and the whole chemo thing, and I went to the hospital, General Hospital. Nothing ever shocks me anymore. I've been around the block too long. But when I walked into his hospital room, it was like this burst of heat as opening a door where the furnace is. It just startled me. Never had I seen a body so rearranged and destroyed, every bone broken. He was intubated, he casts and pulleys, and it was I just stood there and my eyes welled up with tears, but his eyes became lively and alert. And I said whatever it was I said to him, and I said, can I anoint you and give you a blessing? And so I anointed his forehead. And then he kind of made a frantic kind of gesture with his hand and a writing gesture. And so I pushed a little table that had a pad and a pen, and he, with great care, wrote on the pad, and this is what he wrote. And you, G, how are you doing? And there was nothing I could do but hold my face in my hands, and I just began to weep. At the power of tenderness in our world to connect us to each other. Exquisite mutuality, transformation all the way around. All of you here this evening have nurtured, formed, and created such a place of transformation called Homeboy Industries. You've done that. For it is a place where we imagine lives not our own, and in the process, all of us are restored to our own true nature, ourselves grounded in God. In this place, together, we live in a deep and abiding sense of being cherished, invited to live with awakened hearts, finally at home, right where we find ourselves. Yes, Homeboy Industries believes that unarmed truth and unconditional love will indeed have the last word. Thank you very much.